who made it.
And hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Rickcast, episode 163. I'm Rick, and I guess we're casting. Anyway, this is a live show, but it's not a live show. I recorded this earlier in the day because I got a call from my lead instructor at the range I work at. He was not feeling good, and we called official partner events where we partner with USCCA. And he was not able to do it because he's not feeling well. I could fill in. I have no problem doing that. So I am at the gun range as we speak right now, which is why the show is live, but it's not live. However, the topics are current to the day here on Brickcast, so we are going to be talking about them. We're going to be talking about Howard Stern getting canceled, the event that's taking place at Fort Stewart earlier in the day. If you know what's going on, if you have updates to what is going on at Fort Stewart, please drop them in the comment section down below so people can have the most up-to-date information. We'll go over the whole thing tomorrow. I'll break it down much more tomorrow when everything comes out, because right now everything's very scattershot the day of a situation like that. So we'll talk about it more then. Governor Greg Abbott has advanced this agenda, or not this agenda, but the legal fight over these fleeing Democrats. Last time I heard, 2 more have come back. Now he's he's positioned or asked the Texas Supreme Court to step in and pretty much say, yeah, you can vacate the seats of those who are not there if they decided to flee, despite the fact that idiot Democratic lawyers will say, this is nonsensical, blah, 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 blah. You know what? It needs to make sense. It needs to happen. And we're tired of these virtue signaling BS nonsense. So we'll talk about all that. And then real quickly to end out the show, because we're doing an entertainment story up front instead of on the back end. So we'll talk about the entertainment story first. So from studyfinds.com, I'm going to talk about something called rust out, because there's just new terms for saying you hate your job, which the sad fact of life is 85% of people will hate the jobs they have. But in the end, you got to do what you got to do to support and take care of your family. And so, in the last 20, 30 years, it was like, find a job you love. Before that, it was like, find a job. And before that, it was, hey, this is our apprenticeship. So it's kind of, circling back around. Maybe not. Anyway, we are going to have a good time. I have to keep this show under an hour, or else Restream won't broadcast it. Like, you can record on Restream and then it will broadcast it as a live show, but it's got to be under an hour. So I can't dilly-dally like I usually do. So subscribe to the channel if you like what we're doing. Even if the show is not live, I will give you guys a show every single day if it's humanly possible to do so. So that is going to be today's show. I look forward to it. Hopefully you guys, the bar rats, have assembled, and they are in the comment section down below, talking about all things that we are talking about today. So let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. So first up, we have this story that is taking place. All right. Yeah, no, I have one warm-up story for you, and we're going to talk about that right now. So X is a buzz, if you will, the saying goes, about the story that is being dropped by Almonda Tareen, this lady. And it says, White House Chief of Staff Susan Wiles, J.D. Vance, AG Pam Law and Bunny Bondi, FBI Director Cash Money Patel, and Deputy AG Todd Blanchet are expected to meet Wednesday evening at Vance's residence to discuss the Trump's administration and their strategy relating to the Epstein case. Now, of course, J.D. Vance has come out and said, this is ridiculous. This is not happening. I can't believe you guys are talking about this. I would never do such a thing. Yada, yada, yada. All that nonsense, which we all know is BS. It's fine. I get it. But the fact of the matter is, this is a big deal, guys. The whole thing is a big deal, and it is not something that is going away. It's absolutely not going away, and it's impacting. That's the one I want. It's impacting the potential long-term candidacy of one J.D. Vance. Now, I don't care. I don't believe in voting for, I don't think I'm going to be voting for president anytime soon. But it's very interesting to see how much of a millstone the Epstein story will be on the necks of the entire administration. You can say they deserve it. I mean, sure, we've talked about it on this show ad nauseum about how this thing was an absolute mess. And guess what? Chickens roosting, coming home, all that kind of stuff. We'll see. He's denied it. That doesn't mean anything to me, but it is something to keep an eye of, right? He can deny it, but it can still be happening. So, interestingly enough, just something to keep in mind. And really, just Trump's handling of it. We've talked about it on this show over and over again. And I know Trump said yesterday, like, oh, maybe J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio could be a ticket going forward. Sure, whatever. Don't care. It doesn't matter anyway, because outside interests have overwhelming influence. Outside organizations have an oversized influence on the federal government. So it doesn't really matter who you elect, because they're going to be running it anyway. All right, let's get to the first story of the night, ladies and gentlemen. I got to upload this video because I didn't beforehand, and I was silly. This story is rapidly evolving, and there was an incident at Fort Stewart in Georgia that took place about earlier this morning. At the time of this recording, it'll be 6 p.m. when this goes. So earlier this morning, this took place.
I want to reference the president now that is responding to the active shooter incident at Fort Stewart via the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, that says this, quote, the president has been briefed on the shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia. The White House is monitoring the situation.
Okay, so there was a shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia. And from Mr. Guns and Gear, you have this. 5 soldiers were shot today in an active shooter incident at the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area. All soldiers were treated on site and moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital for further treatment. There is no active threat to the community. Law enforcement was dispatched for a possible shooting at the second ABCT complex at 10:56 a.m. The shooter was apprehended at 11:35 a.m. The installation was locked down at 11:04, and Fort Stewart lifted the lockdown at 12:10 p.m. Second ABCT complex is still locked down. Emergency medical personnel were dispatched to treat the wounded at 11:09. The incident remains under investigation with no additional information to be released until the investigation is complete. Now, if this follows Fort Hood and there was a shooting in Florida a couple years ago, there's a certain pattern that will identify itself and emerge. We'll see if that pattern continues to hold up or if it doesn't. But this is something that is surprising that Trump didn't get rid of this in his first term, this BS executive order that Bill Clinton did that doesn't allow troops to actually have firearms on military bases. It's just, I mean, there's supposed to be people that are trained to use these things, right? That's what's used against gun owners like you and I all the time. Oh, well, the military and the police should be the other ones that use the firearm. And then they don't let them use the firearms on the stupid installations, essentially leaving them to be sitting ducks, as we see here. Yet we're browbeaten all the time about how they're the only ones that should have them, yet we don't let them have them. Lieutenant Tamako confirmed an active shooter situation with Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and Congressman Buddy Carter expressing concern. Fort Stewart is the largest U.S. Army post east of the Mississippi River and serves as a major training and deployment hub for the 3rd Infantry Division. So that is the active shooter situation that took place this morning. As stated before, we will break this down a lot more tomorrow when we actually get details. There'll be a press conference probably this afternoon while I'm at the gun range, which is why we're not doing this live. This is recorded a little earlier. But let me know if you hear something, if something's happened in between when this is being recorded at about 1 p.m. Central Time and the show at 6. Let me know, drop it in the comment section, and we can continue that dialogue down there. But just a real quick advisory, something that's happening. There is an active shooter at another military base, as they are not allowed to carry firearms to protect themselves, even though we're told they're the only ones that should have them. This is Rick Cass. Like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell to help the show grow. Moving on through our topics tonight. Subscribe, and we have another topic to talk about. And that is, actually, I think we'll move it to the back end. You know what? Yeah, we're going to move that to the back end. So Governor Abbott is continuing the lawfare that Democrats usually use against Republicans. Of course, this is from the trash Texas Tribune. The Texas Tribune is the biggest rag in the state of Texas. It is legitimately a piece of trash. Anyway, so as we have been charting this, Democrats ran away, and they did the most courageous thing they could ever do, which was run away to Illinois and New York. And now you have like governors of Massachusetts. We're going to redistrict that. You don't have any Republicans in your there isn't even there's not a Republican in New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, or Massachusetts. So the fact that all of these Democratic governors are feigning some kind of outrage, and then you got Hateful Kate yapping on about her districts, none of these places have any kind of Republican influence in them. So the thing falls on deaf ears. And so we're seeing all of that this morning. I didn't want to bring this up. Well, I don't have time to bring this up because my time is limited on these recordings. But apparently there was a bomb threat in Illinois. The police reported that there was a bomb threat. Now, when they say the police reported there was a bomb threat, that means somebody from the hotel called the police and the police investigated it. The way people hear that, like, oh my gosh, the police must have found something. No. All that means is somebody from the Democratic Party called the police and said, we had a bomb threat this morning. It's so sad. And then the police showed up and they have to write it down and actually file it as a specific incident. I doubt that there is any kind of serious threat to the Texas Democrats in Chicago. right? When they do the, oh, we got a bomb threat. It was a bomb threat in Chicago. Yeah, because, right, it's MAGA country. If Jesse Smollett told us anything, I wonder if it's the same two guys that, beat up Jesse Smollett that threatened to blow up the Democrats in Chicago. X to doubt or F to doubt, all of them to doubt. But you have that happening at the same time. You have Abbott talking about, listen, we got to vacate these seats. Ken Paxton's on record saying strip them of their seats, arrest them, bring them back. You got these Democrats need to be held accountable, right? They just do whatever they want. And that's why the country feels like it's going in the wrong direction, because we let these petulant children, as I called them yesterday, run around and do anything without consequence. You serve your district. You cannot run away. You are not courageous by doing that. We're preventing a vote. You lost. You're a bunch of losers. You lost the first time, and now you're a bunch of losers because you ran away. And you people are still like, oh, we're going to win the Senate seat this time. Or we're going to win this thing. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. Good luck. Texas is turning purple, but Texas is in such danger of becoming a Democratic state that the Texas Democrats have to run away to actual blue states for cover. Anyway, Democrats are there. Governor Greg Abbott has asked the Texas Supreme Court, which, by the way, is 9-0 conservative, so we can see how that goes, to expel House Democratic leaders who left the state. Now, of course, the Texas Tribune, which is a flaming rag of an existing journalistic outlet, like these people pal around with Democrats and they call themselves, news outlets. Legal experts say it's inconsistent with the Texas Constitution to argue that leaving the state to halt legislation qualifies as abandoning office. Well, maybe we should look back into that. It's probably based on a precedent. So why don't we look into the precedent and update it? Because those they can only be updated when Democrats are in control. I'm sorry, I forgot. That was my big mistake. We can only update these things when Democrats are in control. But Governor Greg Abbott on Tuesday asked the Texas Supreme Court to remove Houston Chair Jean Wu, the chair of the House Democratic Caucus, from office, an unprecedented escalation in Republicans' efforts to resume business. You know what? All you need to do, and I think Abbott's right, cut off the head. If you remove Jean Wu from office, the rest of them will come crawling back over broken glass, because as principled as they want to call you, they care about power. And if one of them gets the chop off, one of them gets the hit, the rest of them will be like, forget this nonsense. I'm coming back. You already had two that returned. So they're getting closer to that quorum. This redistricting will happen in Texas, and they need to just stop all this nonsense. And you know what? I want this so bad, because I want Jasmine Crockett redistricted out of existence, at least congressionally. I don't want her to have a congressional seat. I think people like her should not be rewarded for being race hustling trash. And I would say the same thing if it was a white race hustler, but guess what? There's no white race hustlers out there. There is one, Jasmine Crockett, who grew up in a life of affluent privilege. We would call it privilege if it was a white person, running around with a ghetto accent, trying to pretend that she's from the streets, which is insulting to actual black people that struggle and live in economically depressed areas that are trying to make things of their lives. This lady comes riding in a Cadillac, throws out a couple axes and swings her head around a little bit, and everybody's supposed to think that she's one of them. Get me out of here. Get me out of that nonsense. At least 50 House Democrats have left the state to, quote unquote, prevent the chamber from obtaining a quorum, the minimum number of members necessary to undertake legislative business, in an effort to delay passage of new congressional lines that could net 5 seats from Republicans. Winners get to make the rules. What did Obama say? Elections have consequences. These, ladies and gentlemen, are your consequences. Deal with it. Your savior said it. Your savior said it. Elections have consequences. These are them. So now, I mean, they go into this, and of course, the rest of the article is the Texas Tribune saying, well, technically, Abbott can't do this because it's really mean, and we don't like them to do that to Democrats. Because shut up. I don't care. I don't care about playing nice. Because you guys don't play nice when you're in charge, so why should I care about it? Anyway. So, like I said, mostly with all these stories, except for the Howard Stern one coming up next, we'll just keep watching this. Friday is the day that if they don't come back by then, Abbott and Paxton are trying to expel people from their seats. All you got to do is expel one. You got to knock out the bully in the playground. If you knock out the bully on the playground, everybody else will fall in line. If you take Gene Wu and you remove him from his chair and you toss him out like yesterday's garbage from the Texas chamber, then guess what? The rest of these people who are making all these videos, nobody's going to listen to Jasmine Crockett if they lose their seat. If the choice is listening to Jasmine Crockett, who's going to lose her seat, or go back and keep your seat, all these people are going to go back and keep their seat. And Jasmine Crockett's going to be alone, yelling to herself. So I'm glad that this is continuing. We'll see what the Texas SCOTUS does. Yeah, it's 9-0 conservative, but most SCOTUS, at least conservative Supreme Courts, are always afraid of setting legal precedent that can be, quote unquote, used against them down the line. So it's not a slam dunk yet, but I at least appreciate Abbott. Even if it's a charade, he's at least continuing to put the pressure on liberals. For once, it's nice to see the pressure be put on them. And it's also nice to see in the age of X and, alternative media, which I hate saying, the narrative that we're just trying to prevent Trump America, blah, blah, blah. And most of the alternative media just saying, you're a bunch of cowards. You lost. It's done in the blue states. Republicans don't run away or flee or do anything because they really doesn't matter. So you guys took the loss. That's it. You can't do anything about it. All right, next up here on Rickcast, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you subscribe. If you're wondering why I'm kind of, it feels like I'm speed running through today's topics, it's because this show is recorded and I have to keep it under an hour in order for Restream to broadcast it as a live show. I am currently at the gun range. It's Sendero Shooting Sports in Belton, helping out with an official partner event that the range is taking place with. And I will be live tomorrow. I don't suspect anything. I'm not going to go see any movies this week. I already did one movie review, War of the Worlds. You can check it out on Rickcast Reviews. I don't think I want to go see Weapons. That's the new one, and I ain't seeing Freaky Friday. So there won't be any new movie reviews this weekend. But I will be live tomorrow, and we'll talk more about what's happening here in Texas with the redistricting. We'll talk more about what happened in regards to further investigation or further details and what happened in Georgia and so forth. But let's get to pretty much the biggest cultural news of the day is Howard Stern being the latest victim of COVID. Right? He is the latest victim of COVID, and it couldn't happen to a nicer guy because this guy's kind of a jerk, and I'm not really disappointed that he's lost his job because he was never good for the culture. It's a fake, and he was a big fat phony who pretended to be a shock jock only until his time was over. So things it said Sirius XM, and maybe they'll say it in the article. I haven't had a chance to peruse it, but what I've seen on X is that his contract was up, and Sirius XM went from 100 million to 20 million. He said no, and that's why it got canceled. Either way, I'm happy with it because the guy's a joke. He's been broadcasting from his basement like 3 times a week since COVID. He hasn't even gone into New York. Anyway, Howard's canceled by SiriusXM. The news coming soon after Colbert's announcement makes it virtually impossible to conclude anything other than this was done for the same reason. Here it is. Colbert had an annual budget of $100 million, and Stern is rumored to have made $120 million since 2020, with as much as $2.1 billion since he first switched to satellite radio in 2004. So, the news coming out soon after Colbert's announcement makes it virtually impossible to conclude it's anything other than the same reason. Both of them went woke. I mean, Stephen Colbert was always just woke, and Howard Stern post-2020 was a shell of his former self. All he did was complain about COVID and Trump the times he actually went live. Because both have spent the better part of the last 10 years or so, almost the minute Donald Trump came down the golden escalator, alienating half the country. And that's certainly the conclusion that the center right has reached. And also, he's just not good anymore. I mean, if you like that kind of thing, He's just become an old man that complains. And he's certainly doing himself any favors by demonetizing or demonizing the majority of the country. This is such a terrible article. I can't believe I picked it. Come on. Let's see. What's a better one? I'm not using Facebook. Yeah, I know. That was not a really good article, was it? Let's go to news. There we go. Let's go to the Sun US. Howard Stern's show to be canceled after nearly 20 years on Sirius as a $100 million contract is up. So Stern, who's 71, also, let's look at this. He's 71 years old. His shtick doesn't work as a 70-year-old man. You're dirty old. He was a dirty young man, but it's even worse as a dirty old man. He had a megabug contract for decades, and because what was it, Sirius? That's how people were convinced to go to Sirius XM was Howard Stern was going to be on there, and he was going to be uncut. And the fact that he went there, and that was like their halo. If you ever been in a car dealership or known somebody, there's something known as the halo car. And that is the thing that brings people into the dealership. Like if you had back in early 2000s, if you went into a Ford dealership, if it was a really nice dealership, they'd have the Ford GT in the middle. Nobody can afford a Ford GT, but everybody comes in to look at them. Or to Dodge, it would be a Dodge Viper SRT 10, right? You come in and look at the Dodge Viper SRT 10. That's what Howard Stern was to satellite radio. Oh, come to satellite radio because we have Howard Stern. Then we have all the other stupid channels, which ironically enough is how I found my church. Will likely cut some sort of deal for Sirius to keep his catalog upon his exit. He'll probably get residuals on that. Stern's contract is up in the fall, and while Sirius is planning to make him an offer, they don't intend him to take it. Right? The idea is he's been making $100 million on his contracts, and the offer is about 20 from what people are saying, and he's just not going to take that. So, especially because he'll probably get like 10 to keep his catalog on back. Because they have, if there's so many channels on Sirius, they just have rebroadcasts to fill some of those channels. Sirius and Stern are never going to meet on the money, and he's going to want no longer worth the investment. Insider added that fans may expect Sirius to strike a deal for his library. But as far as him coming back and doing the show, there's no way they can keep paying for his salary because he's not worth it. After you saw what's happened with Stephen Colbert, it's like they just can't afford to keep him going. If Sirius isn't going to give Stern a good offer, I don't think it would have anything to do with his ratings. It's more likely everything to do with the political climate. Well, also, he just doesn't do anything anymore. He just doesn't. He just goes on and he rants about how much he hates Trump, or he rants how much, back during COVID, how much he hated the people who didn't get the jab. And he's just a bitter old man, which he has all this money. I think he's married. I don't know if he has kids. I don't know about any of this stuff. You would think the guy's fulfilled. He has the job that hundreds of millions of people would murder their own, they would murder entire villages to have, which is sitting behind a microphone and talking into it. And yet he's still a miserable bastard. Harris is dependent, whatever. I don't care about that. I don't care about Harris going on Stern's show. That's whatever. Look at it. Look at this icon right here. Two old men that used to be really awesome in their own ways. I used to love Springsteen when I was in high school, but now they're just bitter old men that hate Trump. Right? So he's got a book out there. He's got a bunch of other stuff. Guess what, man? You can't do this stuff forever. Right? Well, isn't that the saying? You can't do it forever. Either you go out on top, or you either go out like John Elway, winning 2 Super Bowls and riding off into the sunset, or you end up like Patrick Ewing playing on the Seattle Supersonics, just a shell of his former self. I know sports references abound today, but it is what it is. It doesn't shock me that it's happening, especially in the age. They're not talking about it, but Sirius was great until YouTube and Rumble came around, because like Tim Pool or the Quartering or Patrick Bet-David, as much as I don't like him, or Jason Whitlock, these people pull in numbers that networks used to be like, oh, that's okay, but they're pulling in these numbers all the time. Or like Joe Rogan, and they don't cost as much as Howard Stern. It's a money thing. They're not needed anymore. And that's a problem with Sirius. Sirius is, what does Sirius do without Howard Stern? There's only so many people. Yeah, satellite radio is great if you're driving across the country, but if you get a wireless router, you can drive across the country and just listen to YouTube all day. I mean, half the cars have Wi-Fi in them now, so does it even matter? But it's a couple of things. He's getting up there in age, which we all eventually do. Father Time's undefeated. He became a shell of himself after COVID because he ran to the Hamptons or to wherever, to his private house out there, and just did his shows from his basement. I heard he was only doing 3 shows a day at one point. And then with Trump, he just bitches about Trump all day and how he hates conservatives, even though he used to be so edgy and provocative and all these other kinds of things. Now he's just playing it safe, talking to, his pals at the parties and all these other kinds of things. And there's nothing worse than an old shock jock. And Howard Stern is an old shock jock who's got nothing left in the tank. And that's what happens, man. There's a lady named Joy Taylor. I think we talked about Joy Taylor when her scandal came out. She's been on a couple shows recently talking about how she doesn't want to be 71 years old holding a microphone. And there is some credence to that. Now, you can be like Rush or some of the... Now, if you're doing like talk radio or political analysis, you can do that until your last day on Earth. You still have something to bring to the table because you see stuff throughout the ages. Sports, yeah, you can do that for a really long time as well until you just can't keep up with it. But like shock jock or any of these other kinds of things, it's a young man's game. It's a young man's game, and it's really hard to keep up with it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, last story of the night, just something to end on a little bit different of. From studyfinds.com, do you feel unstimulated and apathetic at work? You might be experiencing what some losers call rust out. In a nutshell, what is rust out? Rust out is the emotional and mental decline caused by repetitive, unstimulating work, essentially the opposite of burnout, which apparently only came around now because back when you had to work in a factory or back when you had to actually like learn a trade and do the same thing, there was no rust out. Rust out is just a made up modern term because we're too comfortable. Oh, I have to sit in a, that's not millennials. Generation Alpha and Gen Z, they look at us with movies Office Space and they go, oh, how miserable it must have been to have a job that was steady, that paid you a good wage. Same thing now. Oh, how terrible it is. You don't have to hunt for food. You just go to your job and you sit in your job all day and you do your tasks and you get a decent wage for it. And then you go home to your moderate. I mean, even the crappiest apartment here in these United States is like a palace in the third world. So it's just complaining, and it's really the result of women in the workplace. Oh, I have rust out. Give me a break. No, you don't. You just hate your job. Men, they can hate their job and work at it for 40 years. Why? Because if it provides for their family, doesn't matter. A study of 154 teachers, of course, in Ireland and the UK found a widespread rust out, often masked by continued professional dedication. Oh, teachers, man, on the cross every day, martyring themselves. They call them thankless positions. What do we call this one? A thankful position. They're just thankful that they exist every single day. Rust out remains a taboo topic in many workplaces. Yeah, because you need to shut up and get to work. No, here's the thing about rust out as a teacher. Nobody's forcing you to be a teacher. The gun is not to the back of your head. And this is my argument to teachers when we don't get paid enough. Nobody's put a gun to the back of your head and told you to be a teacher. You want more money? Go do something else. You have rust out? Go do something else. There is this is not the Soviet Union. You're forced to do this job. Nobody is telling you have to do it. Go find something else. But it's, I have burnout and I have rust out and I have turnout and I have all these things and I can't afford. Just shut up for 5 seconds. All you do is whine. No wonder kids are soft today, because the teachers are soft. You know what? When there were Catholic schools and the nuns were smacking you on the knuckles with a ruler, it was a lot better than these teachers with their 15 masters, and they can't even complete a simple task like not trying to trans your kids. Ugh, just pathetic. I rust out. You know what? Get some Rusties. Get some Rusties from Lightning McQueen. Ka-chow. You'll be fine. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so ends today's recorded live episode of Rickcast. I will actually be live and interacting with you guys tomorrow on Thursday. So do me a favor, like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell on your way out. I will talk to you all tomorrow. Let me know what you thought of the show in the chat, and I will talk to you soon. God bless, and until that day comes, free Dexter Taylor.